Doesn't really watch a ton of film. Had to kind of be shown how to watch film. Doesn't know when he's hot. Doesn't know what he's looking at in coverages. Am I supposed to?
The media establishment built a narrative around Shedeur Sanders, and they built it deliberately, and they built it without a single named source on the record. That is the undeniable, brutal reality sitting at the center of this entire story. Jason Lloyd went on the air, spoke with the full weight of his platform behind him, and told the football-watching public that Shedeur Sanders does not watch film, that Shedeur Sanders had to be shown how to watch film, that Shedeur Sanders does not know when he is hot, does not know what he is looking at in coverages. He said it with confidence. He said it with the casual authority of someone who has decided the verdict before the trial. And now the footage exists. Now the receipts are on the table. Welcome back. This is hot news, and today we are exposing the moment Jason Lloyd's insider narrative collapsed completely in front of everyone watching. Let me be entirely clear with you right now, because I need you to understand what is actually at stake in this conversation before we go any further. This is not simply about one reporter getting something wrong. Reporters get things wrong. That happens. What this is about is a pattern, a deliberate, surgical, undeniable pattern of using the phrase league sources and people around the league as a shield, a way to assassinate a player's reputation without ever having to produce a single name, a single face, a single person willing to stand behind the claim. Jason Lloyd built an entire editorial position on anonymous sourcing, and that editorial position has now been visually, publicly, brutally contradicted by footage that anyone on the internet can watch with their own eyes. Before I walk you through exactly how this played out, I need you to understand the full scope of what Jason Lloyd actually said, because the framing matters enormously here. He did not say he had one source. He was explicit about that. He said he had talked to enough people, multiple people. Different people, all saying the same thing. He used that repetition deliberately, the idea being that if the same claim comes from multiple directions, it must carry more weight, it must be harder to dismiss. He even anticipated the pushback. He acknowledged that Shedeur Sanders is a fifth-round pick, acknowledged that hitting on a fifth-round pick would be a tremendous outcome, acknowledged that the data, as he put it, is what it is. And then he said he simply could not ignore what he had been told over and over and over again by different people. That was his defense. That was his entire foundation. Multiple anonymous sources all singing the same song. And I am here to tell you that foundation has crumbled. Now let's talk about what the footage actually shows, because this is where the story gets absolutely cinematic. Shedeur Sanders was captured on video doing two distinct things that Jason Lloyd's sources told him Shedeur Sanders does not do. The first, Shedeur Sanders watching film alone. By himself, voluntarily, not because a coach sat him down and forced him through it, not because someone had to show him how the process works, but on his own time, in his own space, going through game tape with the focused intensity of a quarterback who understands that preparation is the job. That alone should have ended the conversation. That alone should have required Jason Lloyd to go back on the air and say, I was given bad information, and I owe this player a correction, but we are not done, because the footage goes further. The second thing Shedeur Sanders was captured doing is not just watching film, he was teaching film. He was breaking down coverage concepts and route concepts for Julian Lewis and the other Colorado quarterbacks in the room with him. Let that sink in for a moment. The quarterback, who supposedly does not know how to read coverages, was standing in front of a group of quarterbacks and walking them through coverage reads. The quarterback, who supposedly had to be shown how to watch film, was the one doing the showing. Shedeur Sanders, teaching, film study, to other quarterbacks. That is not a rumor. That is not a countersource from someone with an agenda. That is footage, and I want to walk you through the specific substance of what Shedeur Sanders was actually saying in that session, because the detail here matters. It is not enough to just say he was teaching film. I want you to understand the level of sophistication that was on display, because it directly, ruthlessly dismantles every single thing Jason Lloyd's sources claimed about this man's football intelligence. Shedeur Sanders was breaking down route concepts for the Colorado quarterbacks and explaining the relationship between receiver discipline and quarterback rhythm. He was explaining that when a receiver runs an incorrect route, when a receiver does not execute the route that the play design calls for, the quarterback loses the ability to anticipate. He cannot play in rhythm. He cannot time his throws. He is stuck reacting instead of operating. And Shedeur Sanders explained that this is not just a problem in the moment. He said that a receiver might find success running the wrong route early on, but over time, defenses will catch up. The discipline has to be there from the start because the quarterback's footwork, the quarterback's timing, the quarterback's entire decision tree is built on the assumption that receivers are running the correct routes to the correct spots. That is not a surface-level observation. That is an advanced understanding of how a passing offense functions at the structural level. That is the kind of insight that quarterbacks develop after years of studying the game, after years of understanding not just their own assignment on a given play, but the assignments of every other person on the field, and how those assignments interact. And Shedeur Sanders was not just articulating this concept in the abstract, he was applying it to specific plays, specific route combinations, specific coverage looks. He was talking about reading safeties, reading corners, identifying man coverage versus zone coverage, understanding how a corner's leverage changes the viable options in a route combination. He was talking about choice routes and how the read on a choice route should be clean and simple, outside or inside, and how the receiver's release tells the quarterback which direction to go. He was talking about the relationship between the shallow crossing route and the deeper route combinations stacked behind it, and how the safety's positioning in the middle of the field changes which option becomes the right answer. This is not a player who does not know what he is looking at in coverages. This is not a player who had to be shown how to watch film. This is a quarterback who is fluent in the language of an NFL passing offense, fluent enough to teach it, fluent enough to diagnose what other players are doing wrong and explain the downstream consequences of those mistakes in real time. And Jason Lloyd's sources told him the opposite. Multiple people, different people, all saying the same thing. So now I want to ask the question that the establishment does not want you to sit with for too long. Who are these sources, and why are they saying what they are saying? Because here is the thing about anonymous sourcing in NFL draft coverage, it is not neutral. Sources have agendas. Sources talk to reporters for reasons. A team that does not want to draft Shedeur Sanders has an incentive to shape the media narrative around him. A team that drafted someone else in a position where they might have taken Shedeur Sanders has an incentive to validate that decision by making Shedeur Sanders look like a mistake they wisely avoided. An agent representing a competing quarterback has an incentive to make Shedeur Sanders look like a lesser option. These are not hypothetical motivations. These are the documented, well-understood dynamics of how NFL draft narratives get constructed and weaponized. And Jason Lloyd, to his credit, acknowledged that he had heard these things from multiple people, but he never asked the question that every single person watching this video should be demanding he answer. What do those people have to gain from saying it? Because here is what we know about Shedeur Sanders that is not anonymous, that is not sourced through a chain of people with undisclosed motivations. We know he was a 5th-round pick. Jason Lloyd said that himself. A 5th-round pick. We know that the footage of him in a film room with Julian Lewis and the other Colorado quarterbacks is real and publicly available. We know the content of what he was teaching in that session, and it is sophisticated, detailed, and correct. We know that the narrative Jason Lloyd built on the back of his unnamed sources does not match what the camera captured. Those are the receipts. Those are the facts that do not require a source because they are visible to anyone willing to look. And I want to talk about Julian Lewis specifically for a moment because his presence in that film session is its own layer of this story. Julian Lewis is a highly regarded young quarterback. He is not a player who would be wasting his time in a room with someone who does not know what they are talking about. The fact that Shedeur Sanders was the one breaking down film for Julian Lewis, the fact that Lewis was in that room listening and engaging, tells you something about the respect that exists for Shedeur Sanders' football knowledge in that environment. You do not sit and take instruction from someone you believe is clueless about coverages. You do not engage with a film breakdown from someone who had to be shown how the process works. The dynamic in that room was the dynamic of a knowledgeable veteran quarterback sharing what he knows with younger players who are hungry to learn. That is not the dynamic Jason Lloyd's sources described, not even close. Let me go further because I think it is important to be specific about exactly what Jason Lloyd said because vagueness is how these things get buried. He said his sources told him Shedeur Sanders does not really watch a ton of film. He said his sources told him Shedeur Sanders had to be shown how to watch film. He said his sources told him Shedeur Sanders does not know when he is hot. He said his sources told him Shedeur Sanders does not know what he is looking at in coverages. 4 specific claims. 4. And the footage contradicts every single one of them with direct, observable evidence. He is watching film alone. He is teaching others how to watch film. He is identifying coverage structures and explaining how to read them. He is demonstrating in real time that he absolutely knows what he is looking at. 4 claims, 4 contradictions, and Jason Lloyd has not named a single source. Now here is where I am going to put my name on something, and I want you to hold me to this. The anonymous sourcing campaign against Shedeur Sanders is not over. The establishment has too much invested in the narrative they built. There are teams, there are agents, there are media figures who have publicly positioned themselves on the side of that narrative, and they will not simply walk it back because footage contradicts it. What they will do instead is shift the frame. They will say the film session proves nothing about how he performs under pressure. They will say teaching film in a casual setting is different from processing information at NFL speed. They will find a new angle, a new anonymous source, a new version of the same attack. And I am telling you right now, watch for it. Because that is how the establishment operates when the original narrative gets exposed. They do not apologize. They adapt. They find a new lane. And they drive the same car. But here is what they cannot take away. Shedeur Sanders sat in a film room. Shedeur Sanders broke down coverage concepts with a sophistication that most people covering this story do not have the football vocabulary to fully appreciate. Shedeur Sanders taught Julian Lewis and the other quarterbacks in that room. He did it voluntarily. He did it with specificity. He did it in a way that is now documented and publicly visible. And every single person who repeated Jason Lloyd's sourcing without demanding those sources be named owes Shedeur Sanders a correction they will almost certainly never deliver. I have been watching how this story has been covered, and I am telling you, the conversation that television refuses to have is the one about accountability in draft media. When a reporter publishes a take that turns out to be wrong based on anonymous sources, there is no mechanism for correction, there is no consequence. The reporter moves on to the next story, the next anonymous tip, the next narrative, and the player who was damaged by the original report is left to rehabilitate his reputation on his own. That is what was happening to Shedeur Sanders. That is what the footage just interrupted. And the fact that it took publicly available video of him teaching a film session for the counter-narrative to gain any traction tells you everything you need to know about how tilted the playing field is. Jason Lloyd is not alone in this. The media ecosystem that amplifies these anonymous claims without demanding accountability is the larger villain here, but Jason Lloyd put his editorial authority behind these specific claims. Jason Lloyd repeated them with confidence, and Jason Lloyd has not produced a single named source. That is the record. That is what we are holding him to. Jason Lloyd, named, on the record, with no sources to show. Shedeur Sanders, a 5th-round pick, is sitting in a film room breaking down NFL coverage concepts for the next generation of quarterbacks. That is who this person actually is, behind the narrative, behind the anonymous sourcing campaign, behind the establishment's investment in a story that made him look like a player who did not belong. He belongs. The footage says so. The detail of his analysis says so. The fact that Julian Lewis was in that room, engaged, listening, learning, says so. I am going to put my full credibility on this. Shedeur Sanders will prove every single one of those anonymous sources wrong. Not because I am a fan, not because I am rooting for a story, but because the evidence that is already publicly available points in one direction, and that direction is not the one Jason Lloyd's sources were pointing. If I am wrong, come back to this video and tell me. Drop it in the comments. I will read every single one, but I am not wrong. The pattern is too clean. The footage is too clear. Jason Lloyd's sources gave him a story that the camera just demolished. Now I want to hear from you directly, and I need you to commit to one side. Drop your most honest take in the comments right now. Is the anonymous sourcing campaign against Shedeur Sanders a coordinated effort by people with a financial stake in seeing him fail? Or is it genuinely possible that multiple unconnected sources all independently arrived at the same wrong conclusion about a player who was just caught on camera teaching film at a sophisticated level? I want every opinion that is willing to commit to one side. No fence sitting, no both sidesing. Pick a lane and defend it, because this matters, and the people who need to be held accountable need to see that the audience is paying attention. Hit the notification bell, because the sourcing is going to keep unraveling, and we are going to be here every single time it does. We will see you in the next video.
But when you're told things over and over and over by different people, it's not one person, it's different people all saying this.
Ball, if the safety's standing right in the middle of the field, I'm letting it like. That might be a flat throw, okay? So I know we like to loft things up.
Doesn't really watch a ton of film. Had to kind of be shown how to watch film. Doesn't know when he's hot. Doesn't know what he's looking at in coverages. Am I supposed to? But when you're told things over and over and over by different people. It's not one person. It's different people all saying this.
Ball, if the safety standing right in the middle of the field, I'm letting it that might be a flat throw. Okay, so I know we like to loft things up.